What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you another build for Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. This particular build will be using the Slayer class. And while it is a bit of a themed build, the difficulty target is core. You could definitely do above if you know what you're doing. But as I mentioned, this is a bit of a themed build. So some choices I made purely because they had a theme to them, and I will shout out some alternatives when we get to those particular areas. But the crux of it is that we are playing a cold-hearted Slayer, which in some ways is similar to an assassin, who's going to be using two-handed weapons, dealing a ton of damage as Slayers do, but moreover taking a very lawful approach to everything. And with no further ado, let's actually jump into it, starting with character creation. Now, obviously, we're going to be playing the Slayer class. If you're unaware, the Slayer is probably one of the easiest classes to play. They deal a ton of damage, and they require very little on your end. This is largely down to a few reasons, but for starters, they get Slayer talents, so in addition to every odd level, they gain a feat. Every even level, they gain a Slayer talent. This can be everything from feats to rogue talents and some other stuff. Mostly, we're going to be using it to take feats, though. Later on, they actually also get Quarry, which is typically a ranger ability, which will give us even more bonuses to our attack. But probably most importantly, the Slayer gets an ability called Studied Target. Either as a move action, or if they deal sneak attack damage to the target, they will apply their Studied Target to the enemy. And this effectively gives you an increasing bonus as you level up to your attack and damage rolls against that target, and also increases the save DCs of your ability against that target as well. Basically, it makes it very easy to hit an enemy. Now, at 7th level, you can do this as a swift action, but typically I find it easiest to apply this through sneak attack damage, as it requires you to do nothing but hit the target. But as we level up as a Slayer, you will also get some sneak attack damage as well, which is always nice. However, more specifically, we're going to be playing as a Deliverer. So this is an archetype for the Slayer that trades out 2 of your Slayer talents for 2 other abilities. At 2nd level, you pick up Determined Zeal. Any round in which you attack an opponent with an alignment 2 steps away from your own, you gain a bonus to will saving throws against that opponent, and you gain the benefit of the Die Hard feat until the end of your next turn, which basically means you won't die right away if you hit 0, but rather the next turn. And then at 10th level, we trade that Slayer talent for the more interesting ability called Divine Anathema. At 10th level, if our alignment is 2 steps away from the target's alignment, we will actually deal an additional 2d6 points of damage as divine damage, which makes it easy to deal some extra damage. However, again, you have to be 2 alignment steps away from the enemy. Most things that we're going to fight in Wrath of the Righteous are chaotic evil, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, in terms of race, for the sake of our theme, we're going to go with the Oread, more specifically the Iron Soul Oread. Now, truthfully, not amazing for our stats. However, we do get the ability called Lead Blades, which is normally a spell. This will cause our weapon to deal an extra die of size damage. So for a 2-handed weapon like we'll be using that's normally 2d6, Lead Blades will cause it to deal 3d6. And that's not a spell or anything, you just get to cast it as a spell-like ability, which can help you push through even more extra damage. Now, again, the stats here aren't amazing, and if you're more concerned about min-maxing stats, I would probably go Aasimar or Tiefling. Truthfully, Human is normally a very good option because they get an extra feat at character creation. However, as a Slayer, you're going to get so many feats that that's really offset by the fact that you're a Slayer. So rather than go Human, I would pick something like Aasimar or Tiefling that is just going to give you a very min-maxed stat spread. Ideally, you're going to want strength and dexterity. You don't really need a mental stat, which makes even picking another race a little difficult to do, because typically if you get a double bonus to your stats, it's a physical stat and a mental stat, whereas the stats we need are basically all physical, which can make picking a race here a little bit of a challenge. Now that said, again, the Oreads are not great in that regard, but it's not going to make a huge difference. Now, another option is to go Kitsune, as they technically can make use of Shapeshift, which when combined with a mythic ability can actually give them +4 to all their stats, which is a little ridiculous. But moving on from there to our background, depending on what type of 2-handed weapon you want to use, this is going to change a bit, but basically you want to pick a background that's going to give you weapon proficiency with that type of 2-handed weapon. Not because we need the weapon proficiency, as a Slayer we already have it, but by doubling up the background to give us that weapon proficiency as well, we actually get a +1 bonus to it instead. So if you wanted to go Great Sword, you would pick up Leader. If you want to go Scythe, which is arguably the min-max option by the way, you can go, I believe it's Farmhand under the Craftsman one, but basically pick a background that's going to give you a +1 to your weapon. And then stat-wise, so again, our stats here are a little weird because of our race pick. So basically what you're going to want to do is dump Charisma. I would keep Intellect and Wisdom at 10. I would go 18 Strength, 15 Dexterity, and 13 Constitution, which is definitely kind of a weird spread, but again, because of our weird stat spread, that's just kind of where we're at. Now, in terms of skills, I would mostly recommend Athletics, Mobility, and Perception. You can go Stealth if you want. Stealth is always kind of fun. However, it does require you to actually use Stealth, and if you're not going to, don't pick it. Now, for our very first feat at character creation, you're going to want to pick Weapon Focus in whatever kind of two-handed weapon you want to use. So, Great Sword, Scythe, Great Axe, just whatever two-handed weapon you want to use here. Though, again, Scythe is arguably the best option. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. Now, last but not least, let's talk alignment for a minute. So in order to get the most out of our abilities, we need to not be within 2 steps of chaotic evil, which means what you should not pick are neutral, neutral evil, chaotic evil, or chaotic neutral, because most of our enemies are going to be chaotic evil. There is a little bit of variance there, but like 90% of it's chaotic evil. Meaning that you want to be either lawful evil, lawful neutral, lawful good, neutral good, or chaotic good. The truly safe option here is probably lawful good, as you will fight some enemies that aren't chaotic evil necessarily. Like you're going to fight your fair share of neutral evil, and even just some neutral characters in general. So overall, lawful good is probably the way to go, but lawful evil can be fun as well. But something to keep in mind there, because if you're not 2 steps away from the enemy's alignment, you're not going to get your benefits from your class. Now, from there, let's talk leveling up a little bit. So at level 3, we're going to pick up Power Attack. Pretty standard feat. If you have it toggled on, you will deal extra damage at the expense of a penalty to your attack roll, but we get so much attack bonus anyway, it's not really a big deal. Plus, Power Attack is a prerequisite for the feats we're going to pick up after this. Now, at level 4, we're going to use our Slayer talent to pick up the Cleave feat. This lets us make a single attack at a full base attack bonus against a foe. If we hit, we deal regular damage, plus we get to hit another foe that's adjacent to the first, and also within reach. With this feat, we can only make 1 additional attack per round, and while we use this, we take a -2 to our AC till next turn. By itself, good, but not amazing. However, there's a bunch more feats for this that we're going to go into. At 5, we're going to pick up Cleaving Finish. If we kill something with our melee attack, or just drop it to 0 or fewer hit points, which won't necessarily kill things, which is why there is a distinction there, we get to make another melee attack using our highest base attack bonus against another opponent within reach. Then at 6, we're going to pick up Great Cleave. This improves our Cleave feat, but instead of only getting 1 attack, we continue to make attacks against foes adjacent to the previous foe, basically until we've attacked every individual around as long as we keep hitting. Then at level 7, we pick up Improved Cleaving Finish, which causes Cleaving Finish to hit any number of times per round. Now, an important distinction between Cleaving Finish and Cleave to keep in mind is that Cleave is an activated ability, meaning you have to click it off of your action bar to hit it, whereas Cleaving Finish will be used even if you just make your regular full attack, which is an important distinction because getting the most out of these feats really requires understanding the difference. But truthfully, even if you don't, you're still going to get a lot of damage out of this. Now at level 8, we're going to want to pick up Blind Fight. This keeps you from losing your dexterity bonus if you are caught flat-footed, etc. And while that's pretty good, we don't have a huge amount of dexterity bonus to lose. What we're really concerned with here is the immunity to gaze attacks that this will give us, which comes up a lot. Then at level 9, I would pick up Accomplished Sneak Attacker. At level 9, you would normally have 3d6 sneak attack damage, but with this feat, that jumps up to 4d6. Then at level 11, we can pick up Improved Critical for whatever two-handed weapon we chose to use. At level 12, with our Slayer talent, I would pick up Critical Focus. This will give us a huge bonus to confirming critical confirmation rolls. And then everything past this point is really up to you. I'm going to give some things that I like to do, but honestly, none of it's super required by any means, because at this point, we've basically got everything we need to make this work, and everything past this is really just a matter of preference. Personally, I like to pick up Tiring Critical. Whenever we confirm a critical hit, we will apply Fatigued to the target if we have this toggled on. At 14, with our Slayer talent, I like to pick up Crippling Strike. Anytime that we deal sneak attack damage, the opponent will take 2 points of strength damage. At 15, we can pick up Exhausting Critical. This is the improved version of Fatigued Critical, where instead we will cause exhaustion instead of fatigue. Then at 16, I like to pick up Hunter Surprise as a free action once per day. You can designate a single enemy as prey, and until the end of your next turn, this will add your sneak attack damage to all attacks made against the target, even if you would not normally qualify for sneak attack damage. This is actually really good, but the fact that you can use it once per day is a bit of the limiting factor there, and combined with the previous Crippling Strike, can deal a ton of strength damage and just really debuff your foe just by hitting them. And then at 17, I like to pick up Hammer the Gap just because it's free damage, but admittedly not the most amazing feat. However, we are going to be hitting characters a lot, but keep in mind this only procs off of your full attacks. And then at 18, we can pick up Dodge. At 19, I pick up Toughness. This is really just because by this point, we're really out of feats that we need. And then last but not least, I like to pick up Weakening Wound at level 20. This will actually cause a sneak attack against a target to remove their damage reduction for 2 rounds by an amount equal to your character level, so level 20. Now, there's quite a few ways around damage reduction, good aligned weapons against evil monsters, that type of stuff. So while this is pretty solid, there's a lot of other ways around damage reduction. So this is more of a nice to have than anything else, because again, we pretty much had everything we needed way earlier. Now, moving on to equipment. Obviously, you want the best stuff you can find. Whatever is going to give you the most AC, whatever is going to give you the most stats to your strength and dexterity primarily. That's pretty much what you're looking for. I don't think I really need to explain that too much to people, as that's fairly obvious. However, depending on what weapon you chose to go with, what's best for you will change a little bit. There are a couple of good great axes really early in the game. Great swords in particular are a little light on really good ones. There's like 1 or 2 throughout the game. However, the reason I would recommend people go with Scythe is because in Act 2, you can actually pick up a special scythe called Wide Sweep. You can buy this from the quartermaster of your war camp, Wilser Garms. And while it is a bit expensive at 30k at that level, eventually that will become nothing. And when you pick up Wide Sweep, anytime it lands a hit on an enemy, it will deal its weapon damage to all adjacent enemies, which does stack with your cleaving effects. Meaning that the cleaving line of feats combined with this scythe will deal a nonsense amount of damage, combined with the extra damage we're doing simply by being a slayer, and you can start getting some insane damage numbers with Wide Sweep. Combine that with the fact that you can actually use Wide Sweep through the entire game with the ability of a spell called Greater Magic Weapon, which will increase the effective plus enhancement bonus all the way up to its maximum of +5, keeping this relevant throughout the entire game, which makes it hard to recommend anything else. Now, you can use other two-handed weapons if it floats your boat, but if you want to go purely min-max, Wide Sweep is honestly the way to go, which is really the only specific piece of equipment I would recommend over anything else. Now, from there, let's talk our Mythic Path a little bit. Personally, I like to go Aeon because much like the Slayer itself, it is very hands-off. It gives you a ton of benefits simply for being an Aeon. You don't really have to toggle a bunch of stuff. It just kind of is. So this primarily comes in the form of immunities and your enforcing gazes. So just for being an Aeon, you become immune to a ton of stuff as you level up your mythic ranks. And eventually this will actually extend to your companions as well, making them immune to things. And then you get enforcing gazes, which will benefit your entire party while debuffing the enemy across a wide variety of stats, such as your attack rolls, your damage rolls, caster DCs, save DCs, etc., etc. It's just a very easy Mythic Path to play with, which I think is a great Mythic Path to combine with the Slayer because the Slayer also functions very similarly and they get a ton of benefits without actually having to activate or do a lot with them more often than not. But in terms of our actual mythic abilities and mythic feats, in terms of mythic abilities, you're looking at things like Leading Strike, Last Stand, Unrelenting Assault can be a great one that'll give you a ton of extra damage, or even Mythic Charge, which will add divine damage per mythic rank to your charge attack. Basically, any of those would work. And then there is the Mythic Feats. Mythic Feats, you basically just want to pick the versions of the feats you already have, but the mythic version, because the mythic version will make them even better. So it will, for instance, reduce the penalty on power attack while increasing the damage done, that type of stuff. So when you pick your mythic feats, just pick the mythic version of the stuff you've already got. And from there, with no further ado, let's talk combat a little bit. Now, believe it or not, I actually wanted to show you guys some combat from before we actually pick up our level 10 ability, Divine Anathema, that extra 2d6 on our attacks. So everything you're seeing here is against enemies that are taking reduced damage from us. We're not dealing our Divine Anathema yet, and I just wanted to show you guys how effective this could be before we even start adding more and more of those benefits, which are passive effects anyway. You don't really have to do anything for those, they just happen. So in combat here, if I wanted to bypass the damage reduction, I would want to get something that gives us good aligned weapons, like the Covenant of the Inheritor item, or any ability that would give us good aligned weapons, basically would bypass the damage reduction of these demons, or even using cold iron weapons, that type of stuff. So here we can see, even at level 9, with damage reduction, not getting all of our benefits, I even miss an attack in this particular set, we still deal over 100 damage to this group of demons, just with our cleave feats, basically. And wide sweep, of course. In fact, even with all of that, we still hit for about 140 against this group of demons right here. And then just a little bit later, basically the same thing. We use our cleaving hits, just all those extra hits via our cleave feats, and we deal well over 100 damage, and we're not even looking at our main class feature of Divine Anathema yet. Now, the really nice thing about playing this class and this build really is the fact that all of the stuff is very passive. A lot of these effects basically just do this stuff for you. So you want to do your typical stuff like buffing up before combat, of course. But beyond that, really all you have to do is toggle your Enforcing Gaze, basically just activate it for combat. And then after that, you can basically just regular attack things, and you're going to do tons of damage because of all the benefits from being a Slayer. And it's very hands-off, even on the higher difficulties. You really don't have to do much to get just a ton of damage this way. And as such, if you're looking for a very approachable, easy way to play the game, this is about as easy as it gets on the higher difficulties. Short of just turning the difficulty all the way down, this is about as easy as you could ask for, which I think is its main strength. Now you combine all of those things with role-playing it like a logical, stone-hearted Oread, and you've got yourself an engaging way to play the game as well as role-play your way through it as an Aeon. So, hope you guys enjoyed the build. If you did, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, let me know how you feel about it down below, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.